Good evening, Demon fans, and welcome back to a very special edition of the Demonland podcast. My name is Andy, and there was no game this week to get frustrated over due to the bye, and hopefully the team takes this time to reset and play out the year in the manner that we were accustomed to in 2018, in the hopes that a mathematical chance can become a reality. And, well, it's a pipe dream, but at the very least, the back half of the year can perhaps be the yardstick for what will hopefully be a better 2020 season. Well, I mentioned that this will be a special edition of the Demonland podcast because in just a moment we'll be joined by former Demon Captain David Neitz to talk about his stellar career at the D's, which earned him a slew of personal achievements, and we'll also get his thoughts on the current crop of players and the team going forward. After the break, I'll be joined by my co-host Grapeviney and the great David Neitz.
Kicks inside the 50. Yes, hello.
Neitz, the bounce beats him. Miller's a chance at the back, lays the shepherd. Neitz from a long way. Curling ball, right through the middle.
Spears the pass to Neitz.
It was too hot. McKay. Oh, he's bounced his way through. The big man, David Neitz, lead from the front, what a goal. Inspiring football moment.
Left nothing behind. He has 8 for goal number 9. He's got it. Neitz at 9.
Tight situation. We thought an impossible angle, but nothing is impossible for the moment for the Demon skipper.
But this for the Melbourne goals record. You beauty.
You beauty indeed. Our guest tonight could do it all. After making his debut in 1993, he quickly developed into one of the game's leading defenders before moving forward, where he surpassed the great Norm Smith to become the club's number one all-time goal kicker. He also has the honour of being the club's games record holder. He was MFC captain from 2000 to 2008, also a club record. He won the Coleman Medal and a Bluey Truscott Trophy in 2002 and was twice All-Australian in 95 and 02. In May last year, he was inducted into the AFL Hall of Fame. Welcome to Demonland podcast, David Neitz.
Thank you very much, Andy. Pleasure to be here.
Now, Nita, you began your career as a forward and kicked 6 goals in just your 6th game. You were then moved to centre-half back and played on some of the game's premier forwards. One of those forwards, perhaps the greatest of all, Wayne Carey, nominated you alongside Glenn Jakovich as the toughest opponent he played against. How does an honour like that stack up against some of the other achievements that we mentioned earlier?
Yeah, look, it was it's always an interesting start. It's you're at nervous times at the start of your footy career, and I was playing alongside Glenn's brother, Alan, in the early days in the forward pocket next to Alan Jakovich, and that was an interesting experience, being told to get out of his space, move to the boundary line, But that
presumably
was probably the first 6 to 8 games. I guess I played up forward, managed to slot a few in one game, but other than that, it was fairly quiet. And yeah, Neil Baum threw me into defence, and it proved really a really good I suppose learning ground for me, if you like, and playing on some of the game's greats, Stephen Kernahan, Stewie Lowe, and Wayne Carey as well. So great opportunity, as it turns out, as a learning experience, given I played most of my time beyond that up forward. But certainly to play against Wayne Carey and to have some really solid battles over the journey, and to come out on top on a few of those was nice, and Wayne speaking highly of me was something I'm quite proud of indeed.
Nita, what was the impetus for the move up forward, given that you were going such great guns in defence, and where was your preference to play? Because you'd be one of the few people who got selected for All Australian really at either ends of the ground. Sorry.
Yeah, Jace, it was necessity in the end. We had probably the nucleus of a pretty good spine there with Gary Lyon was sitting at full forward, the big ox at centre half forward, slot me in at centre half back, and we had a few people roaming at full back. I think Sean White for a little while in those earlier stages of my career. So we had what was a pretty good spine, but then Gary went down with all of his back injuries. The big ox went down with his knee. So I guess that sort of was about out of necessity. So I ended up playing. We weren't playing that well. I'd find myself as a defender. If we were going okay and getting it forward, I'd find myself as a forward, and just playing that swingman role, which has probably come back into vogue a bit more in recent times. But I found myself doing that for probably about 5 years, I reckon.
You played alongside some quality forwards at your time at the D's, Jakovic, Lyon, Schwartz, Farmer, Green and Robertson, just to name a few. Who was the best of the bunch?
That's going to get me into some trouble.
You can name all of them.
How can I answer
Especially if
that
Jakovic is listening.
Come out of this alive. Look, they're all very different players, but obviously grew up with the Ox from early stages, and probably got to see him more as a centre half back when he was at his height. But watching him just sort of across half back line, looking up and seeing the big Ox presenting, kicking it anywhere really in his vicinity, whether the kick was good, bad or indifferent, he'd somehow find a way to grab hold of it and make an impact. And he was probably the most awesome and devastating player that I'd played with at that particular point in time. There wasn't that much that he couldn't do, I don't think. So that sheer brilliance would probably stand him above everyone, but I someone like Gary Lyon, his leadership qualities were amazing, and I spoke to Gary relatively recently and said, we've got Bontempelli and Cripps and all these guys playing as forwards, playing as midfielders. He probably should have been doing that because he was obviously a great forward, but he could swing into the midfield and be damaging in that role as well. So I'll keep talking, I suppose, about the wizard Jeff Farmer and his electrifying abilities were just phenomenal. And then someone like Russell Robertson, who really you look at him and he's probably a small midfielder these days, but he held down centre half forward for such a long time and through a really good period for the Demons, and managed to kick 40, 50 goals a year on a consistent basis. So I've been pretty lucky with some of the teammates I played alongside with, and that's for sure. And Brad Green as well. He could sort of do everything. Sort of, played forward early in his career, through the midfield on the wing, sliding back into defence. Such a great reader of the game. So I feel quite lucky to have played with the players I played with.
Do you think if Schwarter hadn't gone down with all those knee injuries, we'd be talking about him, or not us because we love him so much, but do you think the rest of the AFL community would be talking about him, about the way they talk about Wayne Carey?
I think it's more probable than not probable. If you do the if buts and maybes, but at that particular time, I think the end of the 94 season, particularly that final series, he'd take 15 marks, kick 5 goals and centre half forward, and on a regular basis towards the back end of that year, it was just unbelievable. You don't see those kind of stats. I think if he was able to continue on unencumbered, I think it's quite probable that's exactly what we'd be talking about. But look, it didn't quite happen. But for him, then he came back after 3 recos, and what did he say? I think he said he used to have a turning circle of a Ferrari, and then it was a turning circle of a tugboat or something like that when he came back. But he managed to still win a Melbourne Football Club best and fairest after the 3 recos, and I suppose that's sort of testament to his footy smarts and just his ability to just find a way and his love for the game. No, it could have been a much greater story, but I think he still had a pretty impressive story that he was able to put out there on the park.
That's right. Nita, I didn't have this question in my notes, but the current football department isn't going with a 2 ruckman game plan. And on our website, many of the users are lamenting the fact that we're struggling up forward with form and some injuries. And Jason will be asking you specific questions about that later. But my question relates to when Maxi is resting, and we've been doing this for the past couple of years, and we're taking one of the tall forwards out of their position as the relief ruck, leaving our tall forward stocks quite bare. What are your thoughts on that strategy? Would you go with 2 rucks? Is there room for 2 rucks in the modern game? I don't really remember you doing much rucking outside the forward line, but then again, you probably played in an era that had 2 ruckmen.
We did. We had Jeff White playing as ruck, and he didn't. It was also the era when people didn't rotate and those types of things. So, and Jeff actually he rucked all day.
Yeah.
It was hard work keeping the second ruckman. You know, you had Darren Jolly who left us, Troy Simmons who left us, because it just wasn't quite the done thing back in the day to have to get much game time for that second ruckman. But look, I suppose more when we're talking about what's going on at the moment, I probably find it's a bit difficult if you have Wiedemann, Tommy McDonald, then just try and squeeze Bruce in and Gorney. It makes it a little bit difficult.
Too top heavy.
Just that forward line pressure is so important these days, that when the ball hits the deck, you've got to be able to pressure. So I think it's hard to play 2 rucks in the one team, and it's probably the way of the modern era is to have that forward ruckman and a really solid option as a forward ruckman who can come in and give Maxi some relief.
Nita, Essendon were almost unbeaten going into the 2000 grand final. Did you rate us any chance leading up to that?
We did, absolutely we did. You know, the 2000 season, we were a pretty young team, really. We had all the retirements. We had Todd Viney and Jim Steins and Gary Lyon and all those guys sort of between 98 and 2000, all that happened. And we had, a stack of young blood coming through, and Brucey and Greeny were the 2 sort of key guys, I guess, and most memorable from that era. But no, we got on a bit of a roll, and we were playing some really good footy, exciting brand of footy. So we did. We thought we were a big chance. But yeah, as it turns out, when you win just about every game of the year, you only drop 1. There's a reason for that, and they were red hot that season, the Bombers. So as it turns out, it was too much of a task. But no, certainly going in, you give yourself all the reasons that you can win it, what you've got to do, and why you can beat them. I think earlier in the year we'd been relatively close, only within a few goals. So you think a few things go your way, you might be able to make a fist of it. But no, they didn't go our way, and it was a devastating result.
You took the second equal most contested marks in a grand final in that game, which is a considerable feat. Essendon were very physical with us earlier in the game. There was the incident with Troy Simmons and the one with Brad Green where he sort of got roughed up by a couple of players. Did we do enough to respond to the pressure and physicality, or did Essendon just overwhelm us on the day?
Look, I think it was there was a little bit of that. I tend to think that they were probably just too good of a team for us on the day, and perhaps the mental side of their game and the edge, the mental edge. We were going into the game on the back of a lot of wins in a row, a lot of excitement, and maybe a bit more hope. And I think potentially with the Bombers having been in finals for a few years, probably missed out on getting what they thought they deserved the year before. And it's more of a mental hardness that I think that they might have had the edge over us than necessarily a physical one. Even though obviously the Michael Long, particularly the Michael Long and Brad Green incidents, that's more of a physical side of things. But I think it was more of a mental edge rather than a physical edge that they had over us on the day.
supporters often talk about 1998 as being the one that got away. With the exception of the granny that you played in, did you think we could have snagged a flag in any of the other years that you played?
Yeah, look, I tend to sort of agree with that. There's a few of my teammates think that also back in '94 was perhaps one where we were a chance, and as I was talking earlier with the Ox on fire, Gazza Lyon playing well. We had the nucleus of a pretty good emerging team, I suppose, at that particular point in time. But I'm with you. I tend to look at '98 and think of the mix of experience and sort of emerging guys coming through. That might have been the one where we could have given it a shake. And unfortunately, North Melbourne on a Friday night under lights, bloody Corey McKernan, I think I reckon it's just about the best game I've seen him play. But where we what do we fall? A couple 3 goals short or something that night, but we were right in the thick of it in that prelim final, and then Adelaide going to win it, who we of course beat relatively comfortably earlier on in that final series. So yes, but it's the story. You got to get there to be able to win one, and we couldn't get past North to do that.
Nita, you were coached for the majority of your career by the great Neil Danaher and formed a very close bond with him. Can you tell us a little bit about that relationship and what Danaher's meant to you and to the club?
Yeah, look, he was. I think he was fantastic when he came into the club. He took us back to school and was very clear on the way he thought the game should be played. And he spent a hell of a lot of time just going through a whole range of different detail on game style, and also just sort of some footy smarts, educational type things. Invited some of the senior players. We had Brett Lovett and Gary Lyon, Todd Viney, Jim Steins, to all engage with that process about just the thoughts on the game. So that was a really important start, I think, for him. And early days he was very intense, potentially a little bit too intense, and but he sort of came to us with a real clear view on what his expectations were. So I thought that was fantastic for our group. And then as things grew, between him and I got to see through some ups and downs and trials and tribulations of 10 years coaching at the club and obviously playing in a senior role alongside him. You get to see close hand some of the stresses and pressures that AFL coaches are under, and the way that he handled it, and even the team, when the team was under pressure, he was quite good at absorbing that. I guess if there was any criticism and things like that of the playing group, he was quite good at being able to absorb that himself, protect his boys, and then let us get on with the job of trying to play footy and trying to get better as a team and as a group. So his resilience is certainly something that shone through. And then I guess he moved on and you retire and we sort of kept on developing the relationship as mates after footy, but and we're still obviously doing that at the moment. We know his time's going to be cut short, but we're still catching up and when we can and having a laugh and a red wine and a few beers and those types of things still to this day.
Must be hard for you to see him now. I mean, it's such a great thing what he's doing with the awareness for fight MMD, but it must be hard to sort of see him the way he is now.
Yeah, look, he doesn't like to dwell on that too much, Neil, as we all know. But look, it's a devastating disease, and it's a shocking thing for anyone who has to go through it, and for Neil and his family and Jan and his kids. It's really hard work, but but all we do is enjoy the time that we've got, and whenever we catch up, we make sure we have a great time, and suck the most out of life that we can, and that's certainly something that he has absolute belief in doing, and that's what we'll continue to do.
As he mentioned in his speech to the boys this year, he certainly likes telling a story still, that's for sure. Nita, we mentioned the very long list of accomplishments that you've achieved across your career, culminating last year in your induction into the AFL's Hall of Fame. That must have been a tremendous honour for you, but I'm assuming you'd trade all that in to have had a flag under your belt.
Oh, absolutely, no doubt about it. It was a great recognition, and I guess that's what it is, and it's lovely that the AFL and the Hall of Fame committee sort of look at your career and give you that recognition. So obviously very grateful for that, but it's not what you play for. You don't start your career saying, "Gee, I can't wait to be announced at the Hall of Fame."
Yeah.
It's you see yourself on the dais holding up the Premiership Cup or getting the medallion across your neck, and all the hard sweat and tears and training and all those things that you do. That's what you do it for. But no, unfortunately, that wasn't my journey. But look, obviously our Demons are at the moment are don't have the year that they want to have. But certainly that opportunity is right there, staring our boys in the face over the next few years. So that's what we want to see. We want to see those boys get up there and achieve the things that I wasn't able to.
Nita, amongst supporters, one of the favourite highlights from your career came against the Hawks in round 1 of 2002 when you knocked Luke McCabe into next week before gathering the ball and kicking truly. What are some of your favourite memories from your long career?
That was an interesting one. That one it came at a time for me when. I guess 2000 we played the grand final. 2001 we didn't respond that well in that year, didn't make the finals. So 2002, so the end of 2001 and that pre-season 2001, 2002, probably a lot of reflection for myself as the young captain, I guess at that time, as to what I wanted to do and how I was going to respond as a leader. And while that wasn't necessarily the response, it was a nice start for me in that year, and probably helped me to put a stamp on my leadership at the footy club. So it was an interesting moment. Although I have caught up with Luke McCabe since, and he's had enough. He said, "Can you tell those Demons to stop playing that footy? I've had enough of that." But
so he's woken.
But it was an interesting moment. But there's lots of different moments throughout seasons. I remember, what was it? Probably a couple of years later, we'd played against Richmond. Might have been round 2. I think we got beaten convincingly in round 1. Maybe it was 2004, I think. And the footy world came down on our club, on the players, on the coach, after a round 1 loss. And we came against the Tigers, and I managed to kick 9. We had a great win and got our season back on track, and it was a round 2 win at the end of the day, so probably don't think about it too much, but for me and the group at the time, it was a really important moment. So I sort of think about some of those games that might be insignificant in some ways, but they sort of stay in your mind.
Post your playing career, you were appointed to a position on the AFL Tribunal. What do you make of the current MRP process and the perceived inconsistencies that many supporters accuse the current system of? Yeah,
it's interesting. I'm sitting on the tribunal, so I can't really say too much about it. But look, what I will say is that you get to the tribunal. It's a tough job to start off with. and there's it involves interpretation as much as there's the guidelines that are there, and they try and sort of make things as clear as possible. Something like the degree of force. One person might see it as low, another person sees it as high, and by the time it gets to a tribunal, there's a panel of three, and not everyone has the same view on certain actions. So you end up getting a lot of great and interesting debate. I know that there's some decisions that you play out in the media that there's a lot of conversations that happen in the media that happen at the tribunal while the panel are discussing the pros and cons of a certain decision. So all of that is taken into account, but at the end of the day, it's a human process, and some people will agree and some people will disagree, and it's hard to take that out of the equation.
Look, we just should clarify, we weren't criticising your decisions, which are always fair and balanced and reasoned. It's everybody else we've got an issue with there. So.
And the ones that weren't right, I voted the other way anyway. There was the other
exactly.
two.
Nita, just got a couple more for you. We're very grateful for your time today. You also spent some time as a part-time assistant coach at the Hawks. Are your coaching days behind you, or could we coax you back to the D's to assist with the current woes in the forward line and with what Simon Goodwin calls our quote-unquote connection?
Yeah, no, we have had a couple of connection issues. We've got a few different issues going on at the moment, but no, the time at the Hawks was really interesting. Obviously, spend a little bit of time with Clarko as a player, as a teammate, but spending a bit of time with him in that sort of assistant coach position was quite fascinating to see how he views the game and looks at the game. So I really enjoyed it. As I said, it was a part-time role, so that I just didn't have the time commitment for it. But look, I enjoyed it. At the same token, it didn't inspire me to go on and sort of try to commit myself full time as a coach. And my view on that is if I felt like I wanted to try and become a senior coach, then I'd take up coaching in a more serious way. And if I didn't, then I wouldn't. So I don't see myself being a senior coach. So therefore, I'm out of the whole coaching equation.
Yep. Fair enough. Look, we'll pick your expertise anyway. What do you perceive as being the problems up forward, and how can they be fixed? And I guess part two to that is, and you were a beautiful set shot on goal. What can we do to overcome the horrible yips that seems to have struck the boys this season?
Yeah, it's the forward connection one is a difficult one. It's I think it's just a whole range of different things. Midfield decision making, there's starting position things that go into that as well. But it's a little bit difficult when you don't really sit inside the walls and understand what Simon's trying to do with our guys. Yep. But look, I think there's probably a little bit of knowing when to go fast and when to go slow. Our decision making up the ground on that, I think we're still evolving in that. Sometimes we go slow when we should go fast, and other times we go fast when we should go slow. So, it's not. I don't think it necessarily comes overnight, but we'll get better at those decisions. And then when you're comfortable with the decision making of it, I think the skill execution part starts to come naturally. You're a bit more clear minded about what your decision is, and then it's easy to execute the skill. And then goal kicking. I mean, my view is just get in front of the goals and practice routine and just keep at it at training. But I know it's a bit more difficult these days with the way that the sports science guys get involved. But certainly for me, it was because I wasn't necessarily the greatest kicking goal particularly early, but it's just repetition. Get in front of the practice the routine and put the hours in. That's the key.
Yeah.
Some very sad news recently with the tragic passing of Anna Green, wife to your teammate and fellow D's captain Brad. How is Greenie going, and are you and the boys able to help him in what must be a really difficult time for him?
Yeah, look, just a shock to start off with, and just terrible really with two young boys. So there's going to be some difficult times for Brad, absolutely. But he's been amazingly stoic, and he's obviously thinking a lot about his boys and trying to make them as comfortable as possible and keep things running along as smoothly as possible for them. But they're all gonna have some hard times, and I guess one of the positive things about being involved in a footy club or in whatever community that you're involved with is that people do rally around you. And he's got a great friendship group from Tassie. There's their school community, and Aaron Brad's friends around there, and obviously the footy club have all rallied around. So everyone is doing as much as they can. But yes, it's a terrible shock, and she was just such a lovely person. It was quite devastating.
Nita, we'll finish on a happier note. You've been involved in a new venture these past few years, Brewmanity. Tell us a bit about that, and in particular the partnership that you have with the MFC for the 2019 edition beer.
Absolutely. No, Brewmanity, we kicked off in 2015. So we started off initially with a mate of mine who worked at CUB for quite some time, and we'd been kicking around the idea of doing a beer. And when Neil Danaher was talking about doing some fundraising for MND, we thought, well, let's get out there and put this idea of doing a beer out there and try and do some fundraising. So we did, and that's sort of now continued on and grown and developed over the past 3 years. So we've raised probably about 250,000 for that, and a little bit of every sale we make goes back to the foundation, which has been a great thing. And yes, we've collaborated with the Demons for the Demon Brew, which is super exciting. It's essentially a fundraiser for the footy club. So for a small little company like us, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to be sponsoring a footy club. It's something that we can't really afford to do. But the club said, well, how about we try and do it as a fundraiser and raise some funds for the club, and everyone can have a really good beer along the way. So I think initially we were hoping we were going to be having the beer in celebration, and we might be doing a bit more drowning of our sorrows, it looks like. But hopefully the second half of the season we can get a bit more excited, and we can celebrate with a couple of Demon Brews rather than commiserate.
Well, I've purchased my 2 cases of the 2019 edition, but I'm hoping I can crack open the 2020 edition celebrating a flag.
Absolutely, on my word.
Well, Nita, we want to thank you for joining us on the Demonland podcast tonight. We really appreciate you giving your time to us, and thank you for all the joy you brought supporters over the years. Many of us haven't experienced the ultimate glory, but we've been blessed with some amazing, talented footballers over the years, and you certainly are one of those that sit alongside the great demons of our generation, such as Robbie Flower and Jimmy Steins. Thank you very much, Nita.
Thanks, Andy and Jason. Pleasure to be on. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you. Well, that was Demon legend David Neitz. We'll be back next week to hopefully discuss a win over the Dockers in a match that will see former Demon Jesse Hogan return to the MCG to face his old club. We'll also be joined on the next Demonland podcast by former Demon Rodney Grinter to have a chat about his playing career and also the work that he does now as chairman of the Melbourne Football Club Past and Present Players and Officials Association. If you're listening to this show at your leisure via SoundCloud on demonland.com or via Apple or an Android podcasting app, be sure to subscribe to the podcast to receive updates when a new show drops. Don't forget to leave us a favourable review to help more people find us. We're also on Spotify now, so you can get the show that way too. Go to demonland.com to find the links to your preferred method of listening. You can follow us on social media on Facebook at facebook.com/demonland31, on Twitter at Demonland, on Instagram at Demonland31, or on YouTube, just search for Demonland Podcast, and you can listen to some of the interviews that we've conducted with current and past players and coaches, just like the one we did with Nita tonight. Or if you just love talking about the D's 24/7 all year round, why not join up to Demonland.com and chat with other D's fans about this great club? Go Demons!